What's going on, guys? Student Dr. Shak here. Welcome back to another video. Let's talk about what I did to prepare for the 7-hour long MCAT. Let's get right into this, but first, if you're new, definitely consider subscribing. So first thing, generally speaking, content review is one of the first things that people address. So for content stuff, you can definitely use third-party resources like Kaplan. I think Kaplan is a great source, but to put it simply, you don't really need to do that much content review. Looking back, I think I overemphasized doing a lot of content review in the preparation for my MCAT exams. I overemphasized doing content review over actually doing practice test questions and developing test-taking strategies for the exam. So I wouldn't really hyperfixate on doing content stuff, at least in the later stages of your MCAT preparation. I would do it for like 2 months and really dedicate your time learning the high-yield stuff. The best resource for science-heavy subjects like Gen Chem, Biochem, and OChem for sure are probably Kaplan. So I would honestly buy all the books for that, then just read through it. If you think a flashcard app like Anki would help with retention, then you can use that. I think you shouldn't make cards though, because making cards for content stuff really is a time-consuming process. And also there are a lot of pre-made decks available that you can find on Reddit. I've linked a couple of them in the description below. The main thing about Anki is just being consistent with doing them. But at a certain point, you'll have so many cards, you just won't have much time to get through a lot of them, especially if you have a lot of practice questions to do and a lot of reviewing of those practice questions, which I'll get into later. The next thing, get UWorld and go through a bunch of practice problems consistently. For the MCAT, UWorld is very good for content review because it addresses the stuff that you really don't know. It tests what you know, and more importantly, it tests what you don't know. For the questions that you get wrong, read the explanations to see why you got it wrong and how certain topics relate to each other. If you can piece together concepts from one subject to another, then that actually helps a lot with the science passages on the actual exam, especially for classes like Gen Chem and physics. I remember on my actual MCAT during like Chem Phys, there was a passage about like this new lab tech equipment. Basically, it was just this really complicated filtration system, like the one that you've seen like Breaking Bad or something. It asked about like airflow, which inherently just means that you need to know like Bernoulli's principle or like Pascal's principle. It then also tested one of the containment systems within the apparatus and how that one compartment dealt with temperature and pressure regulation. So then after that, they asked about ideal gas. So Bernoulli's principle, Pascal's principle, ideal gas law. 3 separate concepts from 2 different subjects. The point is to know how these different topics relate to each other and connect in different ways. And more importantly, how these different concepts can relate back to human physiology and medicine as a whole. And you can do this very well if you go through all the UWorld questions, especially after reading their explanations. The second thing is you need to practice specifically for the MCAT. I know I talked about UWorld just now and how it's useful for content review, but that's only useful for content review and not the actual MCAT exam. On top of that, UWorld is only for figuring out which topic you're deficient in terms of knowledge. Along with UWorld, you kind of have to start preparing for the MCAT critical reasoning and analysis section, so the CARS passages. The thing about CARS is that you can get 100% on a CARS exam if you spend an unlimited amount of time. Unfortunately, the biggest issue for a lot of students is that you have to be very efficient with your time, and once you attend questions on that section ineffectively, then it affects your entire section. The earlier you get affected, the more constrained the time is, and the more likely you're going to get more questions wrong. So you basically have to be very efficient with your time and answering questions effectively. To be good at that, you have to start practicing CARS very, very early on. I would say probably when you start preparing for the MCAT as a whole. I already have a CARS video, so definitely check that out on how to prepare properly for that section. Also, start doing passages for the other sections. You can do a lot of practice passages, including for the CARS section, through this website called Jack Weston every single day. Now, Jack Weston, it prepares you on how to develop a flow with attending all kinds of passages on the MCAT exam. It's just like UWorld, and it's not as representative for the real thing. By doing passages, you're going to be maintaining a certain baseline level of stamina that'll help you with transitioning into the third-party material to the actual AAMC material. So you do this, you do content review, UWorld, any other third-party resources, Jack Weston, you name it, until 2 months leading up to the MCAT exam. So you're 2 months out from MCAT test day, and now what do? So what I did was, and this is kind of why I didn't fully optimize my score, I did more content review and less practice, and I kind of shot myself in the foot. It was the reason why I didn't improve that much. During this time, 2 months out from your test day, now is the time you have to be doing AMC material, the question banks and the practice test. Initially, you'll probably be doing a practice exam every single week and then reviewing the next day to see how to properly understand the logic of the questions that you got wrong. One thing I definitely recommend is seeing where the test writers are navigating in the passage to best support the answer. If you can identify where they do that, you can start to see patterns in how they ask their questions. And the sooner you figure that out, the better your score is going to be, because these guys are the ones that write your MCAT exam. Now, during this time, you can actually do even more practice through other third-party resources for developing that stamina. So I would recommend doing Blueprint and maybe Altius. Third-party resources will deflate your scores very, very much. So if you do get your score back, don't get discouraged by it, because chances are the first couple exams of Blueprint or maybe even Altius, it's not representative of the actual score that you might get. Do those for sure, but only for the purposes of improving your stamina for the actual MCAT exam. And yeah, spend time reviewing as much as you possibly can. For every exam you take, it should be like 2 times more time reviewing those exams. So for example, if you take a full length exam for AMC, let's say you take that on Friday, you'll probably spend your entire weekend with breaks here and there doing the review. So let's talk about certain tips that I think that don't have to do with actual MCAT preparation. This has to do with more lifestyle pieces of advice. Don't get tunnel visioned into doing a bunch of MCAT prep. I remember when I was preparing, I spent maybe 15 to 17 hours every single day. Like I'd wake up at 6 a.m. I'd finish studying at like 9 or 10 p.m. no breaks. My mom would come down and give me food whenever the meals were there, only because she knew I was studying and she didn't want to disturb me. You don't want to spend all your time in one place. You want to kind of divvy up your mental energy throughout the day. If you're sitting in one spot, you studying for 17 hours can be accomplished within probably 4 or 5 hours. If you're actually efficient with your time, if you have the right headspace, if you're focused and you focus on the right things to do. For example, doing 6 hours of Anki is not going to be as effective as spending 6 hours reviewing passages. The second thing is developing a routine specifically for the MCAT and leading up to the MCAT. So for example, chances are your MCAT exam is early in the morning at around 8 a.m. You want to develop your morning routine, because chances are that morning routine will help you get in the right headspace on test day, starting with the very first question on the MCAT exam. I didn't do that. I just kind of woke up, went straight to studying, didn't do anything else to mentally prepare myself for the long grind that is MCAT preparation. If you do that, that'll definitely help you. And that's not just the morning routine, this is also including your night routine. If you're stressed out the night before, you won't get a good night's sleep, very, very anxious during the actual exam. That'll likely inhibit your score. And some people will probably do better because they have the right levels of anxiety and stress to push them to be very alert, focused during the exam. The last thing, definitely focus on diet and exercise. I didn't emphasize that enough in my MCAT preparation. So definitely do that. So eating the right things, going to the gym at least 3 times a week, making sure you're eating the right things, not eating fried foods and eating out. And honestly, the last lifestyle advice that I have is keeping in touch with your social structure. Keep spending time with your friends and family. Obviously don't over prioritize that, but anything that will help reduce that stress is definitely helpful. I know for me, I had to prepare for the MCAT during COVID, and that was not helpful at all because I couldn't physically reach out to my friends and go outside and grab a bite or something like that, just because everything was locked down. And even then, like, I didn't install like video games like Warzone or Fortnite or anything like that to play video games with them. After months and months of preparation, this is your moment for you to showcase your ability to think critically about every single question and show med schools that you're ready for their rigors. On actual test day, you need to have that level of confidence. Not too much confidence, but not little confidence. That Yerkes-Dodson optimal arousal theory type confidence. That's what it comes down to. Don't worry so much about the result. Worry about all the test-taking strategies that have been shown to be effective in your preparation. The results will speak for themselves. During the MCAT exam, you have 10 minutes between each exam. I don't know if they change it up, but definitely take those breaks because that is how you'll have your brain reset for the next section. So what do you do if you think that a whole section didn't go so well? How do you mentally prepare for the next section? Well, you'll know that there are a couple questions here and there that maybe threw off your entire game, especially for the car section. You'll know that there's a passage that's extremely difficult that might have messed up your entire flow of things. The test writers want to see how you can handle the pressure, where one set of 9 passages is not going to define your career. And if you have that mindset, it'll be easier for you to move on. And if you think that full section on the MCAT was a blunder, then definitely consider avoiding, which you have that option at the end of every MCAT exam. That's ultimately up to you. It depends on what your plans of applying to medical school are. My take on avoiding an exam is if you prepared hard enough, if you applied the same strategies, if you worked diligently to correct your mistakes, unless you fell asleep on the exam, then I would not recommend avoiding the MCAT exam. And with that, that's the full MCAT experience. experience. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for your support. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.